Good morning, year 8. It's the last of our 5 weeks of distance learning, and then we'll see what happens after the holidays. It doesn't look like we're coming straight back to school, so I'll be letting you know what we're going to be doing instead for those first few weeks. I'm still, fingers crossed, hoping that I will see you again very soon. Okay. So this week we're going to look at data. This is a recap. We've done this topic before, but I want to go back over it, make sure you haven't forgotten. So today and tomorrow you're going to be doing grouped frequency tables. I'm going to do an example now, and then I'm going to set you 2 exercises to do, which will take you more than a lesson to do. I will then tomorrow publish my answers to the questions that I set you, and record another video to talk you through some more details of those answers. But let me just run through now a typical group frequency table question. So I've got a set of data here. I don't really know what the data is from. It doesn't really matter. The fact is it's a set of data. There have been some measurements made and collected and put into this table here. Okay, so the first thing to identify is what is the type of data. Well, it would appear that this data is lengths. Don't know the unit because it doesn't say, but I could just as easily make it up. Let's suppose it is centimetres. Sometimes it will say there what the unit is. So let's suppose the unit is centimetres. And there's been some data collected. First question, how many pieces of data were collected? Have a think about that. Have you thought about it? Because I'm now going to work it out. To find out how much data was collected, I need to look at this column here and add up the values, because these are how many of each group were collected, and it's 100, nice round number. So there were 100 values collected. I can write that number there. Okay, now it's important to note I do not know the individual values of any of those 100 pieces of data, because they've been grouped into sections. So I know there were 11 values that were between 0 and 5, but I've no idea if they were, all the same or different. Presumably they weren't all the same, but how they were spread across the range 0 to 5. Some of them will have been near to 0, some of them will have been near to 5. So group frequency tables are a bit naff really if you want accurate information, but if you want to summarize data, especially when you've got a lot of it, they're particularly useful, because you don't have to spend ages writing out lots and lots of individual values. And they're usually good enough to give you a fair picture of how the data looks. So that's why we use them, group frequency tables. So what are you going to be asked to do? Well, you're going to be asked to find the mean, estimate which of the groups has the median in it, and to identify which is the modal group. Okay, you may then be asked in the exercise to say something about your results, but you can see that for yourself when you do the exercises. So if you're going to find the mean, let's do the mean, you will need to find the midpoint of each group. And this is the value that's in the middle of each group. If you can do it just by looking at it, then that's fine. So I can see straight away that the middle of each of these groups are these values here. If some people find that difficult to do, I don't know why, this is pretty obvious to me, but hey ho. If you can't immediately see what the middle value is, and you can do it on your calculator, I don't know if you can see that or not, it's not particularly clear. But, say I wanted to find the middle of this one, I would add together the 2 values, right, to get the total of 35, and then I would half that. And that will give me what the middle is, 17.5. It's like kind of finding the mean of 2 values. Add them together and then divide by 2. Don't make the mistake of doing this, which some people do, which is to type in 15 plus 20 divided by 2 like that on their calculator. I don't know if you can see that there. It's a bit clearer, isn't it? Okay, if you type that in and press equals, you're going to get the wrong answer. Those that know BIDMAS will know what answer is going to come up when I press equals now on the calculator. Have a think about it. The answer that's going to come up is 25. And that's wrong. That's not in the middle of 15 to 20, clearly. The reason it's wrong is because the calculator will follow the rules of BIDMAS, and it will do 20 divided by 2 which is 10, and add that to the 15. That's not what I want it to do. I want it to add the 15 and the 20 together and then divide by 2. You can force it to do that in one go by putting brackets around the 15 plus 20 like that, because then BIDMAS kicks in, the brackets get done first, etc., and you get the right answer. Anyway, those are the midpoints. Now this last column here is where we calculate the total score of all 11 values in that group, the total score of all 37 values in that group, etc., etc. It's very simple to do. We just multiply these two numbers together. I'll definitely need a calculator for this. So 11 times 2.5 is 27.5. 37, talk amongst yourselves, times 7.5. Oh, you can't, can you, not all together? 277.5. 43 times 12.5. Don't be afraid. Don't be surprised that these values are quite large. You're basically adding together lots of individual estimated values, and I don't know why they're all ending 7 points. It's a bit weird. They've all got 7.5s in them. Just a coincidence. So anyway, what's the name of this group? Well, sometimes it's called frequency times midpoint, which is a logical name for it, as that's what it is. However, it's sometimes shortened to FX, and the F is the frequency and the X is the midpoint. Okay, so you can call it what you like, but that's what you get when you times across the middle two columns. You get these values here, which are the totals for each individual group. Then what I want is a grand total, a total of totals. So I get that by adding up all of the values in the FX column. Be very careful not to make a mistake. Here we go. Oh, 1,000. Well, that's a nice round number, isn't it? I wasn't expecting that. Somebody's obviously set this data up for that to happen. Well, there you are. Okay, so usually it won't come out a nice number like that. But anyway, the total lengths of all 100 values add up to 1,000, or an estimate of them does anyway. Because remember, these aren't all 2.5, although I've pretended these 11 are not all. I've pretended they're all 2.5. They're not, but that's the sort of compromise of putting them in groups. So that's up to 1,000. There are 100 of them. So what's the mean? Well, the mean is going to be 1,000 divided by 100, which is 10. So the mean length, centimeters. The mean length of whatever this is, I don't know what, maybe they're worms. Maybe somebody's gone into the garden and dug up some worms and they've measured them all and put them in this little table, 100 worms. I don't know. Maybe. You can get worms 20 centimetres long, so yeah, I'm happy with that. I like that. So anyway, mean comes out to be 10 centimetres. However, notice I used this funny wiggly sign here. That means it's approximately equal to 10 centimetres. And the reason that I've used an approximate sign there is because of what I said earlier about how I don't actually know the individual length of my 11 worms in here. I just know that they're all between 0 and 5 individually. So it's an estimate because I've made the assumption that they are all 2.5 centimetres long. Okay, so watch out for that. Next thing I need to do is to work out which group contains the median group. Okay, so median is the worm in the middle worm. However, in this case, there are two middle worms. It's the 50th and the 51st worm. They are the middle worms. And the question is, in which of these groups do the middle worms lie? Well, to do that, you have to look at these numbers down here, and sometimes it's useful to calculate. I'm going to have an extra column on the end here, something called the cumulative frequency. I don't know if all this is coming back to you. We have done all this. the cumulative frequency. And the cumulative frequency is basically adding these up as you go along. So after the end of the first group, 11 worms have been included. At the end of the second group, 48 worms have been included. You add an extra 37 on. At the end of the third group, I've now included 91 worms, and by the end of the last group, I've included all 100 worms. These are called the cumulative frequencies. And they're useful to calculate because they immediately show you in which group the two middle worms are. The thing is, I know that the middle worms are the 50th and the 51st. There's 100 worms altogether. So the middle ones are the 50th and the 51st. Okay, so I just look down here and I think, well, by the end of the second group, I've only included 48 worms. So the 50th and the 51st worm, they must be somewhere in the third group. Okay, early on in the third group. So the first worm in the third group is the 49th worm. So the 50th and the 51st worm are both in that group. So the medium group is this one here. Okay, so medium group is 10 to 15. I was just thinking T can't be worms, can it? Because you wouldn't use the letter T. You use the letter W or something. Oh, I don't know. Doesn't matter. So medium group is 10 to 15. Finally, the modal group is the one that's got the most values in it, and that is clearly the same again because there are 43 of them, and that's the highest value in that column there. So that's what you do with a group frequency table. So your exercise is that you're going to do over 2 lessons. You don't have to do it all today. It's a lot of work. Are these two here? Obvious questions that you're going to ask me, please don't ask me. Oh, do I need to draw it out? Blah, 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 blah. Well, yes, you do, really. Unless you've got facility to print it and can write on the sheet, you are going to need to draw it out. In these questions, you're just being asked to find the mean, not the median or the mode. Now, the one that's going to take you a little bit of time is this third one here, because this one you have to actually do your own table and put them into frequencies, and they don't tell you what the groups are. So it's quite possible you'll get different answers to different people depending on how you do the grouping for that one there. I won't say any more about that, but that'll take a little bit of time. Okay, this might be as far as you get today. And then there's a second sheet which brings in the stuff about medians and modal groups and things like that, which, you know, you might start today, but you're probably going to get onto tomorrow. I will publish a video with all the answers to all of this stuff tomorrow, but let me remind you, this is a 2-lesson set of work, okay? So pace yourselves. And if you have any questions, as usual, just drop me a message. Have a lovely day, Year 8. I really hope I can see you all soon. I'm missing you. I'm missing our lessons.